Hey, we're live. How's it going, Dave?
Good. How are you, Sarah? Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I've been in Dallas for most of the week, so it's very nice to be home.
Nice. You were there you were on the Smart Energy Consumer Collaborative Board, correct?
That's right, SECC board, and our annual consumer symposium is always tagged on to Distributech, which is a big electric distribution trade show, basically. So it's
Nice.
nice to have all of like the giant energy trade show and then like get to go off with the nerds and talk about smart grid programs and stuff.
Yeah. Did you see any cool technology? Was there anything at Distributech, anything interesting and new, or was it all pretty boring?
It was all kind of like variations on the theme of kind of making the grid smarter and more responsive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, probably if I knew more about it, some of the innovations there would have been more interesting to me. But to someone like me, it was like the difference between like an iPhone 11 and an iPhone 13 or something. Like,
yeah. For some person, there's something really cool about the new camera or something like that, right? But you're like, I don't know, my last camera was pretty damn good.
Right, exactly. I mean, all of it is interesting. I mean, maybe the first time you go, it's pretty interesting because I think a lot of the stuff that's being innovated now in grid technology is the kind of stuff that maybe the layperson might have assumed was already happening. So that's always kind of a take-home lesson is that, actually, no, a lot of the grid is still pretty antiquated and we don't know where the outages are happening, et cetera. So we don't have automatic switching or remote switching capabilities and stuff. So these are all really good things. And that probably is actually a pretty good segue to what we're going to talk about today, which is the crisis that's about to hit in central and southern Illinois and across a lot of the Midwestern states. But here in Illinois, in Ameren, Illinois territory, it's going to be an ugly summer. We just found out that the prices are going to more than the supply prices, that is, for Ameren rates are going to more than double on June 1st, which is next week.
Yeah, that very, very, very unfortunate. You are correct that this is something that reflects a national trend, largely driven by high natural gas prices, which is driven in large part, of course, by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But this has, we're in a world where everything is interlinked, and the long and short of it is that on June 1, unfortunately, the average Ameren residential customer is probably going to pay about $50 more a month for electricity. And obviously, this is of great concern to us. It's going to be a great concern to them. I mean, people have a difficult time paying their bills as it is. And so this price shock is coming at a very poor time, to say the least.
So the Illinois General Assembly committees on public utilities and energy held a hearing yesterday that I was a part of, and the hearing was supposed to be about kind of strategies for mitigating the effects of this price increase, which to someone like me would be like, okay, so what do we do now? How do we get people to get the tools in their hands that help them use less, help them save money, get the financial assistance that they might be eligible for. Of course, I should have known. Hearing of this sort is not really about practical solutions, but is in fact about assigning blame. So I don't want to talk about assigning blame to start. I first want to talk about the practical solutions because this is next week, and we have a big deadline coming up on Tuesday for applying for low-income home energy assistance. And Monday's a holiday, so it's really imperative that people call their agencies today to find out if they qualify.
I couldn't have said it better. It's incredibly important. There is a lot of assistance money available for folks who are low and moderate income, and some of that is a leftover from the COVID relief bill. But there's money that is there to help folks. The key thing is, though, you need to reach out and sign up. So absolutely call LIHEAP office. You'll see it, I think, on our screen here. We have CUBHelpSaver.com, which has all kinds of information, including the phone numbers and contact information of who you need to get in touch with to sign up for programs that are available. And, the deadline is fast approaching. And so we really, really, really encourage people to take advantage of those if they're eligible. And if you know of anyone in your family or friends or neighbors that could benefit from this, let them know. Because every year, at least recently, we've had a situation where not all the money is ended up being used, and it's kind of like, well, it's there to help people. Let's make sure people get that help.
Yeah, advocates work really hard to get more funds allocated to this program, and then it doesn't get used. And so then what happens, right? It kind of weakens our argument. We really need to get the word out, and I think a lot of people may not realize they qualify. I think a lot of folks. There's discussion of, maybe people are embarrassed about seeking help. I think a lot of folks, especially people who may be finding themselves in hardship for the first time in their lives, it just doesn't even occur to them that there are programs available. So there's the LIHEAP program for which, that the income verification for that is for the last 30 days. So it doesn't look at your annual salary. It looks like what your income was recently. And so you may qualify depending on what that was. And then even if you don't qualify for that, there are other sources. Ameren has their Warm Friends, Cool Neighbors program. And that's
what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool Friends, Warm Neighbor. I don't know, like some friends and neighbors are warm and cool. And they've donated to a fund, which Ameren has pledged to put some shareholder money into to help people who don't qualify for low-income home energy assistance, or maybe used up all those funds and are still having trouble. So even if you don't qualify for the federal LIHEAP program, maybe you would qualify for the utility run program. So I know I've said this a lot. These are the kinds of things that's really stressful to deal with. It's like it's kind of overwhelming.
Yep.
But take a deep breath and call and communicate and seek out that assistance and advocate for yourself, because it's out there and it's there to help, and we want people to take advantage of it, because we and others have fought really hard to make those monies available.
Yeah, I think that's extremely well said, and we would encourage folks, to go to CUB Help Center if you're looking for an easy place to see all the contact information. But yeah, there are programs out there. There's assistance available, and we really want to make sure, facing these price spikes, that people are getting the help that they need. And at CUB, we're going to be doing everything we can to make sure that that happens, and also that we deal with some of the structural factors that have caused this price spike to begin with.
Yeah, so maybe the next thing I want to mention has to do with kind of conservation, energy efficiency, also demand response. These are things that came up in yesterday's hearing that not only can provide immediate relief to customers now when they take advantage of it. Energy efficiency obviously is getting the same level of comfort in your home using less energy, so it's cheaper. Same or better comfort in your home.
Yes.
A leakier home is less comfortable for obvious reasons.
That's right.
And then demand response too, because that's a key thing that I think a lot of folks are still wrapping their heads around, is this idea that the way that we've been billed for energy most of our lives has really divorced us from how the energy system really works. And so we have to build power plants to cover these spikes in energy demand that are very expensive. And in fact, that capacity cost is what really is the driver of this huge Ameren price spike. So if we had more opportunities for consumers to be incentivized to curb their usage at those peak times, that can help kind of prevent problems like this from happening in the future as well.
A very large percentage of what we pay on our bills is actually driven by about 20 to 40 hours a year, because up until recently, and there have been, we talked about this in the last couple of our shows, there have been some very encouraging developments with batteries, with storage. It is getting cheaper and cheaper, but still, in a lot of cases, it's not as economic as we hope it will be in the future to store electricity, which means you have to, and of course you need reliability, right? You want the lights to be on all the time. So you have to build the whole system out to meet that peak demand, those hot summer days when air conditioners are running full blast. And that can get very expensive. You can think about it this way. There are whole power plants that basically exist just to run for a few hours, and they have to quote unquote recover their costs in just those hours. So it's very, very expensive. So anything that we can do to reduce that peak, energy efficiency reduces sort of usage 24/7, 365. It's kind of always on. But what demand response is, what peak demand reduction is at those times when prices are really high, because usage is high, essentially compensating people to cut back. And you see this in a lot of places where industrial users will be able to, to cycle down their factory a little bit during those times, get paid to do so. And that benefits the whole grid because it's reducing peak, which reduce costs, not only in the near term, but over time. And so it's those types of programs that I think we really need to ramp up and really have a bigger focus on than we have. This whole capacity issue, which is a big driver of the cost increase in central and southern Illinois, is driven entirely, as you said, by peak demand, and capacity prices haven't been that much of an issue in preceding years. Now it is. So we really need to make sure that we have programs in place that are designed not only to benefit consumers who take action, but can benefit everyone because it'll put a lower pressure on prices going forward.
So do you think that there is a way for these programs to help immediately? I mean, that's all well and good. I mean, but I think when we're talking about dealing with this problem, the solutions fall into either kind of long-term solutions or immediate solutions. We just talked about LIHEAP, which is one immediate solution, but not everybody qualifies for LIHEAP. So what about energy efficiency and demand response right now this summer?
Well, two things on that. There are energy efficiency programs that are available that you can benefit from right off the bat. And there's been increased funding for those, and we would encourage people to check those out. Again, not to be a broken record, but CUB Help Center has information on how you can sign up for these Ameren programs. But every little bit counts. There are, for example, smart thermostat programs that can save you a surprising amount on your electric bill just by kind of optimizing, when you use it. But so there's a lot on energy efficiency. On demand response, there's not as much as we would like. I think this is one of the things that we've been pushing Ameren and others to do more of, and it's something that I think with the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that's passed, we are going to see hopefully more of that. But I would note that Ameren has a very good program, something that we fought for them, to have to offer, which is peak time rewards. And that the way that works is essentially if you reduce your usage during a peak time, during a peak event, you get a credit on your bill. Now that program hasn't been run that much by Ameren because capacity prices have been so low, but now they're extremely high, and it would be very beneficial and lucrative for folks. The problem here is that at least Ameren had cut off enrollment for the summer, I believe, in March of this year, before we knew that we were going to be in this shocking price environment. So one of the things we'd like to see is Ameren explore all options for reopening that enrollment period, getting as many folks as possible to sign up. It's not going to be a magic bullet, but there are people who can save $20 or $30 just by cutting back in certain hours through peak time rewards. And we're hoping that programs like that are made more readily available, and Ameren promotes them and does everything it can to make sure people are benefiting as much as possible.
Is anybody talking about this? I mean,
we are.
Are we talking about it together? Like that's something that I've personally been wondering. I mean, we all get up and we're like, we need to come together and find solutions. I heard the Illinois Commerce Commission say that. I heard Ameren say that. I heard elected officials say that. But is there actually a venue where some of these folks are coming together and kind of talking about practically what can be done? Is there going to be any kind of process at the commission to enable that facilitate that conversation?
Oh, well, we sure hope so. I mean, we have have heard, I mean, we heard at the hearing yesterday, a lot of people saying what I would consider to be the right and responsible thing. We need to come together and figure out a plan here, a strategy to deal with this as best as we can. But it hasn't happened yet, as you're alluding to. And so I think it will happen. I mean, anytime you see this level of increase, it's a huge concern, right? And so I do think that it will happen. But at this point, I mean, I think it's something that we're all going to need to work together. I hope the Commerce Commission opens up a workshop, or, I'm not an attorney, some sort of process here, so that we can provide as much relief as we can, to customers, because this type of increase is going to be a real shock to people, and it's our responsibility as our stakeholders, as a state, to be doing everything we can to help folks.
Well, and unfortunately, I just helped lead a class for people in the industry who are working on advanced pricing, advanced electric pricing. And one of my points for these kind of wonks is that the public doesn't care. People really aren't really excited about some of these kind of pricing programs and topics as we are, until the lights go out or they can't afford their bills. So I mean, I think that's just, I'm not blaming the public. I mean, we're all busy. If I work at CUB, I probably wouldn't care either. But I think, we're not going to start hearing a lot of public outcry about this until late June, mid-July, when the bills start hitting. And then suddenly people are like, what is happening? And,
Yeah. And then, I think that's right. And there, I mean, look, you mentioned it, but the average person who wants to have to think about their electric bill, their energy bill, and the energy systems behind it, right? I mean, that's and it's totally understandable. To relate to the conversation that we started with at DistribuTech, the conference that you were at, I mean, I think that we do have very good pricing programs and pricing options in the state of Illinois, like hourly pricing, like peak time rewards. All of these are interesting programs, and I think sometimes they get the perception of, well, the only people who can possibly or should sign up for that are people who really care and know and are following everything on a minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day basis. And I don't think that's true at the end of the day, because, we're moving toward a world where, for lack of a better term, it's kind of set it and forget it, where your devices, be it a smart thermostat, be it, even your iPhone can be programmed to charge only in certain kind of hours and things like that. And I think that's, ultimately kind of technology enabled reductions at peak and energy efficiency is the way we're headed. But yeah, we certainly expect that everyone's going to be getting a lot of calls in June and July as people see this price increase, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that this is a one-time event. I think I mentioned earlier, we had a question in the comments about, is it literally just Putin's fault, or the Russian invasion of Ukrainians' fault? No, there are other factors at play here, certainly. But, one of the things that we've seen, and why we were so happy that the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act passed, is that we really haven't seen, particularly in central Illinois, in the MISO area, what's known as MISO, the regional market in the Midwest. This problem's kind of been festering behind the scenes for quite some time, and we haven't had as many solutions presented as there should be. A nice thing about the CEJA is not only does it, preserve existing nuclear plants, it greatly expands renewables. And in fact, one of the things that we'd like to see is if we expedite the rollout of what's known as utility scale solar. These are big solar farms. Just by doing that, if we build the amount of solar that we're supposed to be building, this problem starts to go away, and maybe even goes away entirely. So CEJA, at the end of the day, has the seeds of all the solutions that we need. We just need to expedite that and move forward as quickly as we can, given that this price spike happened probably sooner than people thought it would.
Another question that's come up a few times is the question of alternative electric suppliers. Of course, Illinois is a deregulated state, both in ComEd and Ameren territory. And so ComEd and Ameren customers have the choice to go with a different supplier. Of course, staying with their incumbent utility, ComEd or Ameren, for the delivery, but the actual supply cost being dictated by whatever your contract is with this third party. Now, traditionally, CUB has been very, cool on these options, especially for people acting as individuals, because we've found that historically the offerings just cannot compete with what the utility through the IPA has been able to procure. But right now, of course, with what people can perceive as maybe a failure, such third-party offerings can look more attractive, and so people are starting to ask if that's a more reasonable option now. And I think my answer to that would be, well, it really depends on what kind of offer you're getting. But these alternative suppliers are facing the same pressures that Ameren is. They're working in the same market, so it's not.
That's what I was going to say. You have to be really careful here. What we typically see when there's a price spike is some alternative suppliers will come in and say, oh, we can undercut the utility price. But then when you look at the offer, maybe it's for only 2 or 3 months. It's kind of a teaser rate. And then it'll go up and it'll be even higher. The alternative suppliers do face the exact same market conditions. And so there might be an opportunity for them to undercut it, particularly if gas prices start to go down, and gas prices are what ends up largely setting the cost of electricity too, because peaker plants often set the clearing price for electricity, and they're fueled by natural gas. And so the gas commodity cost, is a big part of their overall economics. If that price to go, you may start to see some better options. But in general, I think it's buyer beware. However, there could be some attractive municipal aggregation offers coming up. Towns that have aggregated to the extent that they locked in particularly a capacity price, which may not have occurred, but you could see some options here. So I don't think it's as easy as, you want to look around a little bit, especially if it's an individual offer that's promising something that sounds too good to be true. Be cautious. But we could see some interesting municipal aggregation options, and there's no harm in towns and counties and municipalities checking those things out to see if they can get a better deal for their residents.
So we have about 7 minutes left, and so
nice.
I do want to get to kind of the blame game part of our discussion, because I think that is kind of human nature, is to look for somebody or something to blame, and kind of hearing different sides of the story. I keep coming back to the fact that we're a deregulated state. And so again, the hearing I watched yesterday, there were representatives from the Illinois Commerce Commission, which is a state regulatory body that oversees the utilities. There were representatives from the Illinois Power Agency, which is a state entity that's in charge of procuring electricity for ComEd and Ameren customers. And there was a lot of implied, if not direct, blame at these gentlemen. And it was kind of upsetting to watch, because they were basically saying, like, well, we didn't have any control over this situation, and there are things that all state entities can do, but in essence, I think they were saying, like, this is the result of market forces. I mean, the market monitor of MISO, which is the entity that controls the energy markets in Ameren territory and across most of the Midwest, has said that the markets are flawed and has been warning about something like this happening. So that in a situation like this, it is very difficult to assign blame, because it is kind of American market kind of capital. So.
Well, everyone starts talking their book when you have crises, right? And often that can be, and maybe even typically is, unproductive, right? So you'll have everyone, trying to blame someone else who they happen to disagree with on policy issues. One thing we can say conclusively right off the bat is that the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act has nothing to do with anything that's occurring. In fact, CEJA, through its grid planning processes and transmission planning processes and preserving nuclear plants and building renewables, all of that is addressed at this very structural issue, which is that, especially in Central Illinois, Ameren is a weird zone. We are a restructured state. And I think we're better off because we are restructured, but maybe that's time for a different show. But we're a restructured state. Almost everyone else in MISO is vertically integrated, meaning that the generation is in rate base and that gets a guaranteed return. And that can lead to some distortions in how the markets are set up. So this is a very technical issue, and we don't want to go off on a tangent here. But a lot of this is just simply the MISO market design, is sort of all or nothing. Either prices are extraordinarily low, which is a good thing, or they spike crazy. You're like, oh, we need more power. And then, stuff happens. It's supposed to be an incentive, but it's not a very long-term market either. It's a year-by-year type of thing. So this does point the need to come together. Let's make sure that CEJA is implemented as maximally beneficially as it can, and let's focus on expediting in a very concrete way some of the solutions there, because we do have those. I think the General Assembly and the governor were kind of prescient. Let's have these kind of planning processes. Let's invest in clean energy, but that's cold comfort for people facing these summer price spikes. And so we need to move as fast as we can to replace generation in Central and Southern Illinois. A lot of this, coal plants have been scheduled to close for years. They've been closing because they've been outcompeted in the market. They're antiquated technology. I think it's a good thing overall that they're closing. But what we need to do is make sure that the generation is there to replace it. It will be, but this price spike shows us we need to move even faster than we might have thought originally.
Yeah. Well, hang in there, everybody.
Yeah.
CUBHelpCenter.com is where you can access a lot of information, like Dave said, about financial assistance, energy efficiency programs, and even from there, you can learn how to get more involved in some of these processes that you alluded to. A lot of the multi-year grid planning process is already underway at the commission. We're waiting for the utilities in about a month to submit their beneficial electrification plans. So all this stuff is kind of, the wheels are turning, but that's more in the long term. And meanwhile, look at your bills, confront the issue head on, work with the utility to come out with payment arrangements and find assistance in the immediate term, and stay safe.
Stay safe, check on your neighbors and your friends. And do not overlook our friend energy efficiency, because like I said, we both said this earlier and before. I mean, there are a lot of surprising things that you can do that cost very little money, especially with efficiency programs that Ameren runs, that can save you quite a bit on your bills, 10 to 15%, and all of that adds up. So it isn't a magic bullet by itself. You're not going to save $50 a month on your bills from energy efficiency unless, you're not going to save $50 a month on from just energy efficiency. But if you do save 15 and then you take advantage of peak time rewards, and there's a lot that can be done out there to help you out, and we would encourage people to check it out.
And not only do those actions help you on your own personal bill, but they can have a suppressing effect on rates overall too.
That's right. It's not just the individual participants who they obviously benefit from the programs, but because of the way our electric and energy markets work, it benefits everyone, even people who don't take energy efficiency actions, because it is putting basically a price suppressive effect, because you're reducing demand. And like we said earlier, so much of what we pay is driven by not that many hours a year. So if we can figure out a way to reduce usage during those hours, there are cascading benefits for everyone.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. It's always fun to
always great to talk to you.
Corner you and ask you all the questions I've been.
Welcome back from Distributed Tech and
Thank you.
CCC in Dallas and all that.
I did have some interesting conversations with Uber drivers in Dallas
Okay.
The memory of the big freeze in Texas is very fresh. Speaking of, when crises hit, that's when people take notice. People in Texas are talking about this stuff because they learned the hard way.
Well, and yeah, I mean, and one of the things, we haven't directly said it, but we're going to say it now because we've said it before. I mean, with climate change, you are seeing more extreme weather events. It's just undeniable that that's occurring. And that puts additional stresses on our energy systems. And so, again, another reason why it's important that states pass things like the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, that because we're going to need, really, I think, much more specific and focused planning to how do we make sure that we can have reliable, affordable, clean electricity with all these crazy weather events that, unfortunately, we're likely to see more of going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, we got plenty to talk about next time.
We do.
Have a good long weekend. Have a great holiday.
Yeah, you too. Good to see you as always.
Yeah. Take it easy.